Hi, this is Truman. In this video, we're going to talk about all the important things about Microsoft. First, let's look at the history of this company. So Microsoft has been around for more than 3 decades. If you look at the long-term share price history chart of Microsoft, it's been around trading in the stock markets since the 1980s. So a lot has happened in the last 3-4 decades, and if you look at the share price, Microsoft as a share has been doing a pretty impressive job for its shareholder. So something is quite unique about this company. If you think about all the other companies from the 1980s and the 1990s era, companies like Intel, IBM, BlackBerry, and Yahoo, they are all kind of gone sideways, and some of them even disappeared. But if you look at Microsoft today, not only has been through a lot of up and downs, but actually has been doing a very impressive job over a long period of time. And the most critical asset of the company in the early days was its Windows operating system. That has been the cash machine for the business. Every personal computer you have Windows operating system installed on it. And as a business, Microsoft is able to charge a license fee to the PC makers. And over the past 3-4 decades, Microsoft has been making a lot of money from this Windows operating system part of the business. And the second most important aspect of the company is around its Office 365, which is Excel, Word documents, PowerPoint, and all these tools. When you work in a company, usually your companies will pay for these expenses on your behalf, or alternatively, you buy the package on your own. So both ways, either you or the company will end up paying to Microsoft. And the third most important area of the company is around its cloud business. So over the last 10 years or so, there's this big trend of companies moving things from servers to the cloud, and within that trend, Microsoft, Amazon, and Google are the key beneficiaries. So those are the 3 key areas of Microsoft: Windows operating system, Office 365, and Business Cloud. And each of these 3 areas is actually making up 1/3 of the revenue. If you look at the revenue breakdown here, productivity and business processes are basically Office 365 and LinkedIn. That is about 1/3 of the company. And the other 30% goes into more personal computing, which is basically Windows operating system, Xbox, and such. And finally, cloud is 37% of the business. And then if you look at how fast each business line is growing, without a doubt, cloud is growing the fastest at 31% year on year. And that has been, as I said at the beginning, riding the trend of companies moving from servers to cloud. And together with Amazon and Google, these 3 companies are the key beneficiaries of that cloud transition. And then for productivity and business purposes, it's growing at 22%, of which LinkedIn is a key source of growth. And finally, more personal computing is only growing at 12%. So that is the old legacy traditional Windows operating system, which is pretty boring. It's not really growing very fast, but neither is a business that requires a lot of reinvestments. So from a cash flow point of view, that is the business that is actually producing loads of cash to Microsoft so that it can use this cash to invest in actual activities. And then if you drill down deeper and look into productivity and business purposes segment, it discloses additional information. For example, Office 365 commercial is growing at 18%, whereas the consumer part of it is growing only at 10%, and LinkedIn is growing at a very impressive 42% year on year. And then what's even more interesting is you have different margin profiles across 3 segments. So for Office 365 and LinkedIn together, its operating margin is at 50%. For the cloud, it's at 45%. And finally, for Windows operating system, Search, and Xbox, all these bundled together, they're having a margin of 38%. So without a doubt, as you can see very clearly here, not only cloud and LinkedIn are the fastest growing areas of the business, but at the same time, they are much more profitable businesses within Microsoft. Now let's look at the overall margin profile at Microsoft. And Microsoft has 70% gross profit margin and 45% operating margin. And these are really high levels comparing to any other companies you can find in the world. And the reason why the software business like Microsoft is producing so much higher margin is because the capital intensity of keeping the business running is very low. A lot of that is intellectual properties and software. So there's not really much hardware going on. You don't really need to build new plants to keep things running. And that is the beauty of a software business like Microsoft. So what are the main takeaways here? I think there are 2. The first one is LinkedIn and cloud are the 2 major growth drivers. So for a company like Microsoft to work continuously, you need these 2 businesses to continue to grow. And the good thing about cloud, for example, is it's not a really competitive market. There are only 3-4 different players, but the whole market penetration today is still very low. There's still a big megatrend going on in terms of companies moving everything to the cloud, becoming more digital. So the capital intensity in technology investments is going to rise, and Microsoft is well positioned to benefit. And in terms of LinkedIn, when it comes to business social network, it's the most important and dominant player in that market. So it's well positioned to grow continuously going forward. But the beauty of these traditional legacy businesses at Microsoft is that they are all about recurring revenue every year. So once you start using Office 365, it's very likely that you just keep using that and you will renew every year. So that consistent cash flow and recurring predictable cash flow is the beauty at a company like Microsoft. And for LinkedIn and cloud, not only they're the fastest growing businesses, they're also the more profitable areas. The second key takeaway here is to just appreciate how long Microsoft as a large tech company has been around in the last 3-4 decades. It's a very rare phenomenon. If you look at all the other big companies today, from Amazon to Facebook to Google, a lot of them are quite new. They didn't really exist 10-20 years before, or a lot of them have been through a lot of up and downs in terms of business operations. For example, Apple has been almost close to bankruptcy in the 2000s. So you have examples like this, but as a matter of fact, for Microsoft, it's perceived as a very boring but steadily growing company. And one philosophy of investing is, rather than you predicting the future trends, you are actually just giving the money to a company that you think will make that decision for you. So you're actually investing in a dumb way. Believe somebody else will do a better job at predicting the future on your behalf, so that you don't need to be that smart. And it's certainly the case with Microsoft. So for example, I don't really know what will happen in the cloud business or in the operating system industry in 10-15 years time, but I do know that there are a lot of bright people at companies like Microsoft, and by investing in such a large big tech company, I'm giving the money to them so that they can make that decision on my behalf. So they're allocating that capital for me, as opposed to me trying to predict what are the 5-10 most important things in 5 years time. So that is definitely the case with a large tech company or a large company in general here when it comes to investing philosophy. So that's our take on Microsoft. Any other companies you want us to cover, please let us know in the comments.